As his defence, Wallace chose as his solicitor the lawyer Hector Monroe, who was a contemporary at the Liverpool Chess Club. In fact, this appears to be the only motive for Wallace's choice, as Hector was alien to a murder case. The two had also never met, and Hector was reasonably inexperienced in a courtroom. However, he did find evidence that Mrs. Wallace was still alive at 22 minutes to 7. Monroe estimated that the cost of Wallace's defence would be in excess of £1,000, a colossal amount in 1931. Now, Wallace earned roughly £350 a year and had around £150 in his bank account. He even offered to cash in 2 endowment policies, but this was simply not enough. There was only one option. He had to ask his employers for help, and sure enough, they stood by their man. It was James Wilde, the Prudential's chief clerk, who first offered to help. He began by contacting Arthur Evans, who was the Prudential's general secretary. And when this was successful, he then went further afield and contacted Prudential headquarters in London. A short time later, James Wilde received a letter from the Joint National Secretaries stating that "You may rest assured that the Executive Council will consider ways and means of helping our brother member."
I was sitting in the Olympia Cinema on the Saturday afternoon when the verdict was announced, and it was put upon the screen, W.H. Wallace found guilty, sentenced to death. And I remember getting up from the cinema and sobbing my heart out all the way home, because I knew that Wallace couldn't possibly have done that, and I had always thought that British justice was something one could be proud of, but here I felt it had gone sadly wrong.
On Saturday, April the 25th, 1931, William Herbert Wallace was found guilty of the murder of his wife, Julia Wallace, and sentenced to hanging on the Tuesday the 12th of May, after spending time in Walton and Pentonville prisons. After 2 statements and a 4-day trial, he made only one comment.
I am not guilty. I cannot say anything else. He was with me in an office to the rear of the Prudential building. We worked together and got to know each other a lot better. He received loads of scurrilous letters, and he'd say, "Brownie, read through these for me, will you, and just give me the ones you feel I should see." And I used to open those letters, and some of the vile rubbish that people wrote. And whilst 1 or 2 of those letters were sympathetic, the rest were vindictive and nasty.
On Tuesday, May the 19th, 1931, Mr. William Herbert Wallace was acquitted of the murder of his wife, Julia Wallace, in accordance with Section 4 of the 1907 Criminal Appeal Act, and allowed to walk free. He was never declared innocent, but there was not enough evidence to pronounce a guilty verdict. News of his homecoming spread quickly, and the police were called to control a crowd on Dale Street. The comedian Laddie Cliff even invited Wallace to the opening of his new West End musical comedy, The Millionaire Kid, at the Gaiety Theatre. And Wallace described each moment as a joy and a thrill to laugh again. His brother Joseph took him to Broughton-in-Furness, here in the Lake District, where they stayed at Lotham House. Shortly into the trip, they decided it was only fair to speak to the landlady, Eleanor Douglas, to explain who they were. After hearing their story and being the kind and sensitive person she was, she let them stay for 3 weeks. He also made an unwelcome return to his old home in Wolverton Street, but neighbours didn't appreciate his presence. Children would shout Julia's name through his letterbox at all hours of the day, and grown men would block his path in the street. On the day he moved house, a crowd gathered outside to jeer him off. Customers who he'd had for more than 10 years rejected him.
Excuse me.
So eventually the potential gay